We can now focus on drawing the outline of the chair. With the outline now finally made, we now want to add our color. With this stroke created, we can now fill in the stroke with the color here. Use a slightly darker color there and a slightly lighter color here. With these basics understood, we can now continue with the legs, the back, and the top section of the chair. What we will want to do, however, is we will want to make all these separate parts of the chair on a different layer, and I'll explain this later on. So if we go back into this, we've got this named the chair base. And what I'll do, I'll add a new one and we'll name it chair leg 01. When working on new layers, you can choose to hide the previous drawing you had just so you can see the reference a bit better if you choose to. This isn't always necessary, as you can select this little light bulb here and it will make everything a bit more transparent. So now I don't need to hide this. When I do select it, it will be a bit more clear to see, but when I select a different drawing, it will fade a little more. Now this ellipse might be a bit unnecessary for the shape, so what I'm going to choose to do is I'm going to choose to make a rectangle shape instead. When vectorizing, it's always best to try and create an overall shape of what you're going with and then just edit its contours. If you do have a graphics tablet, you can just choose just to draw it straight up. That can be obviously a lot easier for you, but I do not have that facility, so I'm using this instead. So I've added a rectangle to do a basic shape of the chair leg. What you can do with the lines, instead of using pivot points, you can simply hold down the line with mouse 1 and drag it to get more of a sort of arc. This will give you slightly sharp edges, so if you select on the pivots, you can choose to edit them a bit better. Now when I go back onto the references, if I hide this, we can now see we have got chair leg and the chair itself. We can choose to layer these more efficiently so that the leg will be behind the seat, as like that. Now, instead of having to draw each leg individually, what we can choose to do is to copy and paste an already created leg. This is why we sort of separate our drawing. So if we drew the leg and the base all in one drawing, if we copy and pasted it, we'd have both sections. Whereas for this, we just want the leg. So I'm going to choose the leg. I'm going to press the Control C to copy. But when you press Control V, it will create a clone, not a drawing. Now, clones are kind of drawings that are linked together, hence the name clone. We don't really want to do this, so instead what you can do is press Control and B. This will open up a paste special menu where you can go through tons of settings. For now, I'm going to leave it as add or remove exposure. I'm only going to create drawing files when they do not exist, and I'm going to create a new column as well. This is sort of my go-to when I paste special stuff, so when you do change these settings, they will hopefully stay saved. So now we've got a new leg. If we want to choose it, we can hook it up to this. Now, since we've copy and pasted the chair leg, it will be on top of the other layer perfectly, so you won't be able to see it. You can choose to either hide this layer and then move this, or what we can do instead is I'm just going to disable this for a second. I'm going to press this, and using the select key, if we select this option here, where we can select line art and color art, we can move both of these layers at the same time. So let's hide this so you can see this a bit better. When I select the chair leg, when I select this, I can move both the line art and the color art. If I don't have this selected, it will only move the current layer you have selected. So in this case, it could be the line art, and this can become very frustrating. So make sure you've got this enabled, and that way you can drag both the bits at the same time. We'll keep this shown here, and we can see it's in the same place. If I go back onto the reference now, we can now select this, and what I can do on the drawing, you can choose to move the pivot point as well. So if I move this up here, this bit, I can now choose to rotate this leg from that bit there. Okay, so now we've got 2 legs done, and we're gonna copy this process for the remaining 2 back legs as well. Okay, so now we're starting to get more of a chair shape with these 4 drawings. If I move this up, what we can see is we've got the chair base here, and then we've got the 4 legs along here. There we go. So now, effectively, what we've got is a stool now. I haven't made the legs perfect to the reference. As you can see, there's none of these notches or little indents. When working on a production, you will have to follow the reference detail for detail. For this example, I don't really need to, as this is just a wooden chair and there is no studio demand. So I'm very lucky that I can just sort of make this however I like. We are now going to do the same with the back little pivots on the chair and this back top bit here. So we have finally made the chair. We've got the top section of the chair as its own individual part. Each individual pole here on the back is its own separate section. We've got the base of the chair down here as one whole bit. And then we've got the 4 legs which have been separated as well. You can choose how you go about this, whether you use shapes, whether you use the line tool, or if you just straight up draw it on a vector graphics tablet. There is no wrong answer. Everyone's going to have their different sort of work style and what works for them. I have this weird hybrid mix of where I sort of draw with the camera view. Occasionally I'll open the drawing view to see if the line looks okay. And I'll usually have the node view and sometimes the tool properties open at the same time. As projects get bigger and bigger, you might have to like dedicate more screen space to say just the node view. That's completely fine. Again, do what works for you. Some of you may have noticed that the background is now white as well. This has been created using a color card in the node view. So if I remove this here and do a new example, you press enter and type in color card. Under the name color card generator, if you add this to your node view and hook it up to the base composite here at the bottom, you can see we now get this sort of white background. You can choose the color of your background by pressing this yellow box here. You can also choose how transparent it is. I'm going to leave it for white for now as it lets me see the prop quite clearly without any distractions. With this color card added, we can now see what the rendered image will look like. You can choose to preview this by clicking this sort of sunflower button down here called render view. You'll notice it's made the lines look a lot more smoother. The image resolution is also a bit more higher quality, whereas if we go to this open GL view, we can see these small sharpish lines here. If you want an image of your rendered view, you can choose to go up to File, Export. Instead of selecting Movie for an animation, you choose the option Layout Image instead. I usually save my layout images within the Toon Boom file itself under the heading Frames. Once done, you can choose the file format and you can even choose what vector options you want to export, whether that's only the line art, the color art, the overlay, or the underlay. You don't always need to have the color card in the background all the time. If you don't want it, let's say if one of your props has a lot of like white colors or you just don't want a background at all, you can just choose to disable this like any other drawing. That concludes it for episode 4. Using the copy and paste functions, we've finally finished vectorizing the chair. However, there's still a few more things we need to add to the prop, so stick around for episode 5 where we can start the rigging process.